We often describe the modern ecological crisis, pollution, warming oceans, and the loss of species, as a series of technical failures. But these physical symptoms point to a deeper shift in how humanity defines its relationship with the Earth. 5 centuries ago, the scientific revolution changed that definition. Thinkers began to describe the universe as a predictable physical machine, governed by laws rather than spirits. This mechanistic worldview accelerated during the Industrial Revolution. It stripped the environment of its spiritual significance, viewing the natural world as a collection of raw resources, waiting to be extracted for human profit. This aggressive push for extraction found its moral grounding in a specific, heavily debated interpretation of the ancient theological concept of dominion. This history forces us to confront a central tension. Is humanity the master and conqueror of the planet, or is our primary role that of the steward? For most of human history, that master-servant relationship didn't exist. There was no sharp dividing line between human society and the environment. Early human spirituality was rooted in animism, the belief that spirits inhabit mountains, rivers, and trees. This perspective required a relationship of reciprocity. You took only what you needed and offered gratitude in return, acknowledging the forest as a community rather than a commodity. Eastern Dharmic traditions expanded this into a vast cosmic order. In Hinduism, nature is viewed as prakriti, a creative energy that makes the physical world a direct expression of the divine. This diagram illustrates the Buddhist concept of dependent origination. It shows how life is built from the environment. The nodes for soil, water, and sun draw together to sustain the central human figure, showing that our existence is inseparable from these external forces. This understanding of interconnectedness leads to physical reverence. You see it in the quiet observation of gardens and the protection of sacred trees, where spiritual practice and ecological preservation become the same act. By viewing the environment as a shared family community, these ancient belief systems created a cultural framework for a sustainable living that lasted for millennia. The West took a different path. The Abrahamic religions introduced a creation story that placed a unique emphasis on humanity's specific authority over the earth. The Book of Genesis grants humans dominion over every living thing. For centuries, this was widely interpreted as a divine mandate for humans to rule over nature as they saw fit. In 1967, historian Lynn White Jr. argued that this specific interpretation provided the moral justification needed for the large-scale exploitation of the natural world. When the dominion mindset merged with the new mechanistic view of the scientific revolution, nature was redefined as a machine. This shift removed moral barriers to the uninhibited use of ecosystems. By prioritizing absolute authority over kinship, this interpretation provided a moral framework that prioritized immediate human utility over long-term ecological health. However, the dominion narrative is only one side of the Abrahamic tradition. These same texts also contain an ancient competing mandate, stewardship. Judaism includes the concept of Baal Tashtit, which forbids needless destruction, while Islamic tradition describes humans as the Khalifa, temporary guardians entrusted with maintaining the balance of God's creation. Figures like Saint Francis of Assisi modeled this relationship centuries ago, referring to the sun and moon as his brother and sister, and preaching a version of Christianity centered on the love of creation. These traditions suggest that the same foundational texts often used to justify exploitation also carry the principles required for ecological restoration. Today, a movement called eco-theology is bringing these principles back to the foreground. Faith communities are becoming active participants in conservation, installing solar power and advocating for climate justice as a moral duty. This movement recognizes that while scientific data provides the how of climate change, spiritual traditions often provide the why that drives mass human behavior. The thinker Thomas Berry called for a new story, a perspective that integrates modern scientific insight with the ancient spiritual wisdom that views the planet as a sacred, living community. Navigating the 21st century requires moving past the view of Earth as a machine.
Instead, it asks us to see the world as an interconnected web, where our survival depends on our ability